With alien species from all throughout the cosmos, the Galactic Council Room was a hive of activity. Took pride in the most recent technological developments, which had long since replaced the necessity for rudimentary weaponry like bullets or explosives. Their fleets had antimatter bombs, plasma cannons, and they traveled across space like gods untouchable, with energy shields that could repel anything short of a supernova. One of the council members was a tall, blue-tinted creature from a poorer society. Skin and a dignified stance kicked off the meeting. The following item on the agenda was stated. Looking at a holographic screen, this is Earth. The planet's name brought across the room, there were chuckles. By their standards, Earth was a backwater planet that hardly had an existence in the galactic registry, and the information that was available suggested that there was little room in antiquated weaponry. Why are we traveling to an alien that tapped the table with its clawed appendage? They have only recently begun to use crude warp drives, even when talking about Earth. If you may term their weaponry projectile-based, then real bullets, can you know? The council head gestured for stillness millennia before us. We are aware of them because their area of space is strategically valuable, contains resources, and makes sense to subjugate Earth, but let's face it, their military is it's absurd that our scouts say they continue to use railguns and kinetic weapons. Sniper guns are humiliating, and a quiet giggle echoed throughout the room. Kinetic weaponry were remnants of a bygone era, and energy weapons and advanced strategies were used in the species war. Age at which the head of the council carried out a full-scale invasion is nevertheless, a few well-placed blows ought to be sufficient to crush any opposition they may offer. One extraterrestrial, a smaller, quieter creature with greenish skin, forces them to join the Galactic Federation. People have been known to be unpredictable, according to reports. Given their rapid adaptation and apparent ability to flourish under pressure, shouldn't we take a more careful approach to the insector slammed its claws into the table once more? Adjusting to our plasma rifles, the council head nodded. And it was agreed that energy shields prevented their bullets from even scratching us. Without wasting resources, we will send a tiny fleet to overwhelm them. They will have a choice. The Galactic Council reached the decision to either submit or be crushed after speaking with, for them, Earth was just a little annoyance, a tiny planet devoid of antiquated technology they couldn't imagine. The notion of a real threat because, after all, what could humans do to counteract the energy of their advanced ships? The plan was established after the council adjourned with weapons and impregnable defenses. When in action, the Galactic Fleet gathered an impressive array of vessels capable of transforming any planet into the commander of the fleet. A seasoned warrior from the dominant species in the council readied his troops, not anticipating a confrontation. The Galactic Federation would benefit from the conquest of Earth, the enslavement of its inhabitants, and the extraction of its resources. When the fleet left its home base, the soldiers were generally confident in their technology. Demonstrated itself repeatedly, and they had no cause to question its superiority. Earth was just another stride toward galactic supremacy. While military authorities on Earth were becoming increasingly worried that they have obtained intelligence on the approaching fleet and intercepted bits of alien communications. According to reports, the technology these aliens possessed was so advanced that Earth's strongest defenses were insignificant. The extraterrestrial armada included ships that could destroy cities in a matter of seconds, plasma weapons, and energy shields. Despite the impending danger, Earth's military had some hope because its leaders understood they couldn't compete with the alien firepower, started emphasizing their terrain, ingenuity, and a few. One of the main players in Earth's defense was an elite sniper, one of their own hidden weapons. He was trained for unconventional warfare in an operations unit and was renowned for his ability to remain composed under pressure, wait for the ideal shot for hours or even days, in contrast to the aliens who depended on he used patience and accuracy to overcome the overwhelming force. The sniper unit was assigned they were to operate behind enemy lines, utilizing the environment to their advantage as part of Earth's defense strategy. Benefit from the enormous and diverse landscapes of Earth, including mountains, forests, and deserts. Provided numerous chances for traps and ambushes, but the railgun was the real wild card. Strong enough that even the extraterrestrials, with all their technological innovations, would struggle to match. Earth's leaders knew full well that the aliens were too strong for their conventional weapons, including fighter jets, tanks, and missiles. Fleet, but they think that tactical ingenuity and the railgun may change the tide. The railgun was more than just a weapon, it was an example of human engineering that could fire. missiles at velocities capable of rupturing nearly any substance. As the invasion fleet approached Earth's when the armies prepared, they lacked the luxury of arrogance that their alien counterparts possessed. Competitors. They needed to be astute, resourceful, and most importantly, unpredictable. The sniper and his group were informed of their objective, which was to wait for the ideal opportunity at a remote location. Chance to deliver a decisive blow because Earth's destiny was now at stake. The Galactic Council was certain that it had already triumphed and that human opposition would be overcome in a matter of hours. The invasion, but the military of Earth wasn't prepared to surrender. They had one chance. Opportunity to demonstrate to the galaxy the potential of humanity, and when the time came, they'd assume that the war room was tense and that Earth's military commanders had convened to talk about the invasion. And they were aware that they were up against a far more powerful force, since the communications that had been intercepted had been decrypted, and it became evident that the aliens were approaching and bringing their whole force of sophisticated technology with them. The commander in charge of Earth's defense, General Caldwell, stood at the forefront of "We don't have the luxury of engaging them head-on," he replied, his countenance grim. Observing the other leaders, if we attempt to engage them in combat, their ships are quicker and their armaments are more sophisticated. He pointed to the conventional war, saying, "We lose, plain and simple." Enormous screen displaying the trajectory of the extraterrestrial fleet, which will arrive shortly. Our approach must be based on what we do best, which is using guerrilla tactics to conceal and conduct operations while taking advantage of their overconfidence. They believe we're a simple target, and we'll take advantage of that. The room fell silent as everyone realized how serious the situation was, and that the aliens weren't just showing up. They were coming to crush opposition and drag the planet to its knees, but humanity had to overcome insurmountable obstacles. Caldwell turned to the sniper team's commanding position, since he had no intention of surrendering without a fight. "Your unit will be crucial, officer, and you'll be stationed in the Highlands." He indicated a secluded spot on the U. Will have a clear view of their ground forces as they move through this pass. Line of sight on their command walkers. All you have to do is wait for the appropriate opportunity to shoot the commander. Nodded. "We've prepared the railgun. As soon as the target is clear, we'll make sure they believe the railgun was Earth's secret weapon, because it wasn't as ostentatious or sophisticated as the alien plasma weaponry. Although it lacked the range of some of the weapons, the weapon was ruthlessly effective and had been designed in secret. The power of extraterrestrial weapons compensated for this. It could launch a missile at amazing speeds that can penetrate even the toughest materials and be used in the hands. It was lethal. But the sniper himself said nothing, as was his custom. He had fought enough wars to know that words were not necessary. Thus he didn't need to talk. His duty was to just find the rest of the world could only follow the target, aim, and pull the trigger. Crumble all around him. But at that very time, his attention would be only on the shot as the alien fleet approached the leaders while they were completing their plans. Inside the command ship, huge, sleek, and shining ships pierced the night sky as they approached Earth. The extraterrestrial general was certain that his species had never lost a war, and he didn't think Earth would be. According to his scouts' initial accounts, the people were nearly indecent. It was similar to witnessing a primitive species toss rocks while employing projectile weapons. However, the general knew from experience that every enemy was not weak, therefore he never undervalued a target. Despite their weakness, they could be dangerous if given the chance, which is why he had directed his ground forces to move. With caution, they set up a forward base assessment as soon as they touched down. Human defenses, after which the prepared forces of Earth crushed them with overwhelming power on the ground. In the worst-case scenario, the sniper and his group traveled to the Highlands and carefully set up their railgun position. Was gathered in a hidden location with its barrel facing in the direction of the valley, where the alien forces were anticipated to move. Before they had a clear shot patience, the team settled in with the knowledge that they might remain there for days or possibly weeks. Deemed crucial, the aliens would probably dispatch scouts or possibly drones to do a survey. Every step they made had to be considered because they couldn't afford to be noticed in the region. The sniper stayed motionless, keeping his gaze on the scope and looking across the horizon for any indication of the time. Passed slowly as the enemies approached, but then a faint hum arose in the distance. The sound of the alien ground forces had increased, and massive walkers were now standing tall atop with their glittering energy. Mechanical legs walked through the valley below, flanked by infantry troops and smaller vehicles. They were surrounded by shields that shielded them from what they assumed would be merely antiquated human weapons. As he waited for his target, The sniper gently exhaled while keeping his finger over the trigger. He was waiting for the command walker, but it wasn't the infantry or the smaller vehicles that contained the extraterrestrial. The entire operation of the invasion may be disrupted if the general in charge of this portion took out the command unit, merely for a split second, and that instant might be all they required down in the valley. The extraterrestrial soldiers proceeded with their advance with confidence, not realizing they were being observed. Human resistance fighters crouching in the shadows, shielding themselves from the occasional missile or bullet thrown by they saw distance as a sign of dominance, and they had no need to be afraid from Earth's rudimentary guns, but the sniper noticed it and gave Walker the order. It emerged, bigger and more protected than the others, moving slowly, its enormous legs smashing they had been waiting for this moment as the earth beneath it moved toward the front lines. A weak spot in the Walker's shield was targeted by the sniper's scope adjustment. The sniper inhaled deeply to regulate his breathing while the railgun hummed softly as it built up its energy for the shot. Everything else vanished in that instant, and the noises of combat movement of his squad. The target was the only thing that counted, and he fired With a loud snap, the railgun fired, sending the projectile hurtling through the air at breakneck speed before colliding with the shot tore through the Walker's shield, appearing to be impervious to the command, creating a huge hole that briefly tears through the middle. When the Walker detonated, there was a pause, and the alien troops below became terrified. Chaos swept through their ranks as their leaders vanished in a burst of light and fire. Frantically rearranged their shields, realizing that they would be ineffective against the railgun's overwhelming power. Sniper started packing up his troops before he even saw the wreckage, and was ready to move before the aliens could determine where they were. The shot had been flawless, but the conflict was the extraterrestrial fleet towered over Earth's atmosphere. Far away, it's enormous with thousands of extraterrestrial soldiers. The invasion had started in earnest, with ships creating menacing shadows on the land below. They had a major advantage thanks to their sophisticated technology, which was spread throughout strategic areas of the world, but Earth's forces had not fallen as quickly as anticipated. The initial waves of the attack encountered obstinate opposition, and from the start, the alien commanders were growing impatient because they thought this would be a simple conquest. They had believed that our troops, with their antiquated weaponry and apparently archaic strategies, would be routed in a short time, but they were surprised by humanity's capacity to combat the extraterrestrial forces in a non-traditional way. They were now up against an adversary that didn't follow their rules after defeating them with superior firepower. The Earth force utilized every square inch of the terrain, and the alien warriors had never encountered guerrilla warfare on this magnitude. To their benefit, urban landscapes, mountains, and forests all became lethal tanks, built for open-field battle, and alien walker traps fought in the human soldiers, waited in shadowy areas, in densely populated areas, waiting for the ideal opportunity to launch ambushes. Regularly, entire alien patrols would vanish into the wilderness, only to be discovered hours later, completely decimated and without scent of the assailants. A group of extraterrestrial warriors carefully advanced They were given instructions to protect the area. But every move they took was fraught with tension that humanity had developed, abruptly dissolving without warning, and abruptly a high-caliber round fired by a human sniper pierced the energy shield of the woods with a loud crack. Lead alien in dropping it right away. As the surviving soldiers frantically sought cover, panic swept through the ranks. Another soldier was killed when another gun rang out, and the humans began removing them one by one. The aliens were powerless to stop it because Earth's military had mastered psychological warfare and knew they couldn't match the aliens' firepower, so they concentrated on making them unsteady and constantly wondered their subsequent action was effective. Reports from the ground showed that alien units were acting increasingly erratically, and their commanders were getting angry because they couldn't defeat the human resistance. As swiftly as intended in the air above the extraterrestrial fleet's attempt to recover command their vessels, unleashed plasma fire barges in an attempt to subdue the will of whole cities were targeted by the human defenders. But Earth's air defense systems had been ready for this, and missile systems and anti-aircraft batteries responded. As the larger alien boats hovered, they struck down a number of smaller alien ships. Despite the destruction being rained down from above, human forces on the ground continued to move and change positions. Locations to prevent being trapped in the sniper team's commotion after the rail gunfire that destroyed the alien command walker. They continued to be vital to Earth's defense strategy, had developed into a vital asset, and the aliens had attempted to use their precision to hit important targets. pinpoint their location, but each time the sniper team moved right before detection, they were indistinguishable ghosts, track and lethal when they decided to engage in combat in a tiny village that had been transformed into an alien infantry unit battleground. With careful intensity, they advanced through the wreckage, certain that no human force could stop them. They lifted their shields, looking for any movement, but they were unaware that handmade bombs dressed as human resistance had been placed in a trap by when the lead alien soldier stepped on one of the debris that was strewn all over the street. It caused an explosion that tore chaos broke out throughout the unit as the surviving aliens frantically tried to reassemble. But the humans were already drawing near. The resistance fighters destroyed the remaining aliens on the planet in a string of swiftly coordinated attacks. Engagements of various kinds were taking place all across the planet. But instead of battling for territory, Earth's armies where the aliens were unwilling to incur the price of fighting to bleed the invaders dry so that every inch of terrain would cost more. Despite their technological supremacy, the aliens found themselves overextended as their plan took a toll. Unable to swiftly secure the planet in their command ships, alien generals quarreled over the next move. They had misjudged their own capacity for adaptation and underestimated Earth's defenses. The Railgun in particular had undermined their trust in this method of combat. Although their energy shields were meant to be indestructible, the human weapon's raw kinetic force had shown that. The alien leaders wisely changed their strategy, putting more pressure on they targeted large cities in an attempt to lower human morale, wreaking extensive damage in an effort to get humanity to give up. Yet even this cruel tactic failed to have the intended impact. Rather than weakening human resolves as their cities were destroyed, residents supported Earth's military offer. Whole towns started forming resistance cells to sabotage the alien supply, offering assistance in every manner they could, lines and interfering with their patrols, while the sniper team readied themselves for their subsequent target. Intelligence showed where another important alien commander was, and the team was already moving because they knew the mission would be hazardous. The aliens were becoming more erratic and frantic, but they also understood that if they could, it would be obvious that Earth would not be readily taken if another senior officer was removed. Once more prepared for action, the sniper positioned himself and used his scope to examine the alien command center. His crew kept quiet as they awaited the ideal moment when each shot had to be significant. The sniper's finger was hovering above the trigger because Earth couldn't afford to miss any opportunities. The extraterrestrial, unaware that his next breath would be his last, the commander appeared. The alien general stood at the command post examining reports while feeling increasingly uneasy about the campaign, as things weren't going as expected. What should have been a quick victory had instead become a tiresome battle in which Earth's warriors weren't guerrilla warfare had thrown the invaders into chaos as they played by the rules the aliens were accustomed to. More damage was being done than anyone had expected thanks to precision strikes and those lethal rail weapons. Advanced energy shields that were meant to make human weaponry ineffective had been shown to be susceptible to the overwhelming force. The loss of the command walker had been a watershed in the history of human physical force, a humiliation they had not yet experienced. Recuperate from, the aliens weren't prepared to give up in spite of their frustrations. They increased the number of troops they were using and intensified their attacks once the alien general issued directives for a large assault on the defensive positions of Kuman with the goal of using raw force to overpower U.S. forces. However, despite the fact that additional resources were being allocated to the conflict, it was becoming painfully obvious that people had adjusted, and the sniper and his squad had moved to a different location so they wouldn't be readily crushed on the ground. The strain was greater than ever following their prior triumph, and the Railgun had come to represent hope for. Since Earth's soldiers couldn't afford to fail, they have learned that a senior alien commander it was the ideal opportunity to visit the front lines in an attempt to inspire his soldiers and restructure the failing invasion. Chance to attack once more, and the sniper knew just what to do to the alien. Despite having better technology, forces were becoming more careless, which led to a rise as their desperation grew. They eschewed meticulous preparation in favor of full-scale attacks in the hopes that their lack of tactical skill would be made up for by numbers. But Earth's defenders were prepared and had strengthened. They continued to take advantage of the terrain by setting up traps in strategic areas. The sniper squad was constantly one step ahead of the aliens, and each wave of alien forces encountered terrible resistance. Unaware of the existence of human snipers, the commander pulled into the battlefield in his command van, encircled by his as an elite guard. He trusted the superior shields and armor that had shielded him, believing himself to be untouchable. The alien general was unaware that Earth soldiers existed on innumerable other worlds, had long before discovered how to take advantage of their technological flaws. As the extraterrestrial forces advanced on the sniper, he had the alien commander in his sights, waiting for the target, and he was intent on his breathing was steady. And his hands were rock solid on the rail at the ideal moment to hit. The pistol hummed as it surged with force to strike the alien commander with a single, devastating blow. The battlefield without realizing that he was being watched or that the bullet had already decided his fate. Unexpectedly, the railgun's bullet exploded, ripping through the atmosphere at breakneck speed. The alien commanders, despite advanced best efforts, the missile tore through the shield and crashed into the commander's vehicle and destroying it in a split second, leaving the alien soldiers with no time to respond. The leader appeared, and then vanished, leaving behind only smoke and debris. Panic swept through the alien ranks, their commander's passing sent shockwaves through their whole unit. Confusion ruled, and the alien soldiers were uncertain of how to move on in the absence of clear leadership. When Earth's warriors saw the alien army was becoming more and more disorganized, they launched a counterattacking quickly and forcefully. The alien warriors were already overextended, and exhausted from weeks of non-stop fighting, started to disintegrate under the strain they were used to battling in under such chaotic circumstances, people's seemingly limitless ability to. The aliens were taking advantage of every vulnerability because they thought their superior technology would be sufficient to guarantee victory, but they were discovering the painful truth that technology wasn't sufficient to win a conflict. The sniper and his as forces advanced on the battlefield, the crew swiftly relocated to a new area, blending in with the confusion, had changed in the defenders' favor, and the invaders were now having difficulty holding up against Earth soldiers supported by the renewed energy's triumph in the railgun strike, had changed the course, and now the aliens were in the defensive. The situation persisted even as the foreign generals tried to rearrange their troops. Worse, their meticulously planned strategies had collapsed, and their losses increased hour by hour for the first time. The aliens had been on the defensive since the invasion started, since they didn't know how to deal with a species that wouldn't be defeated. They had expected a swift, clear victory when they arrived on Earth. But the alien fleet was still hovering over a planet populated by people who fought with all of their might. Despite their dominance in space, they kept a watchful eye on the situation above the Earth. They had underestimated humanity, and now they couldn't afford to ignore the catastrophe that was happening on the ground. Were paying the price that the extraterrestrials had prearranged for every scenario, save the one in which the alien leadership was in chaos, and the humans didn't just abandon their ground forces. A crucial choice: they could keep investing resources in a conflict they weren't sure they could win, where they had two options: withdraw or cut their losses. But a retreat would constitute a disgrace and acknowledgement that a species they had deemed lesser had defeated them. But carrying on the battle might lead to further devastating losses, as Earth's soldiers persisted in exerting pressure on the withdrawal was ordered by alien commanders. This was a decision taken out of necessity rather than choice. The invasion had failed, and now was the time to show respect for their human enemies. Should leave before the situation worsened for the people on the ground. Of extraterrestrial ships fleeing was a victory. Against all odds, they had repelled an advanced technological force and protected their home, which the aliens thought would be simple to defeat. But they were mistaken. Earth's leaders, engineers, and soldiers had collaborated to overcome insurmountable obstacles and demonstrated that humanity was not to be undervalued. And his group realized they had been instrumental in this victory as they watched the extraterrestrial soldiers withdraw. Once a representation of humanity's alleged weakness, the gun was the weapon that changed the outcome of the entire conflict. The engines of the extraterrestrial ships were roaring as they departed Earth and made their way back through the atmosphere. The security of space, the conflict on Earth had changed dramatically in humanity's favor, and what had once appeared to be in the alien invaders were forced to retreat, while Earth stood firm, turning an inevitable defeat into a moment of victory. For the soldiers on the ground, the cleanup efforts were still ongoing, so there was no time for celebration. Were in progress, removing the last of the alien soldiers that had not returned to their ships. Small groups of dispersed, although troops continued to be a threat. Earth's military were swiftly eliminating them due to a lack of cohesion and leadership. Moved effectively to secure regions that had been occupied by aliens only days earlier, and there was a feeling of they had survived the railgun team after being cautious optimists in the air. Despite the fact that their operation was successful, they were already getting ready for their next orders. There is still work to be done, but the shooter has always maintained his composure and attention to detail. Wasn't completed until every shot he had taken had eliminated the final alien menace. He was aware that the impact of the railgun had been one of the crucial elements in turning the tide of the conflict. News started to circulate as the last alien forces were dealt with. It was becoming evident to the human soldiers that the aliens would not be returning, at least not very soon. Earth's hurried and chaotic retreat had not only kept them at bay, but the humans had also outthink and outmaneuvered them at almost every point. The aliens had turned to substantial reliance on their technological advantage, thinking that their sophisticated weapons and armor would make they were untouchable, but humanity had demonstrated to them that technology alone cannot win wars. The soldiers and people who had battled so valiantly that they started to feel the weight of their accomplishments. They had faced an adversary who had viewed them as nothing, more than a primitive species, which ought to have been easily defeated. But as the alien fleet continued to drift farther into the distance, they were standing triumphant in a fight that no one had predicted they would win. Members of the Galactic Council, who had previously scoffed at the notion, were informed of the failure. Of Earth posing a threat, they sat quietly while going over the information. The reports were grim for their fleet, which should have been unbeatable. They were humiliated by having to back down when faced with human opposition. They had gone through prior to the council leader going over the final battle analysis and attempting to understand how it had gone terribly wrong, and they were so certain in their superior technology that they would win. Humans, however, had shown themselves to be considerably more resourceful and adaptive than anyone had anticipated. In particular, railguns had proven devastating, but their sheer kinetic force had not been taken into consideration. As like they weren't even present, which had ripped through their energy shields. The other council members discussed their following that some advocated for a second invasion by a more powerful force that would permanently destroy humanity. But others were apprehensive since they had already lost too many warriors and ships, and it was obvious that Earth would not be, and humans had demonstrated a degree of tenacity and tactical inventiveness despite being an easy target. Something few other species had ever accomplished, and technology wasn't the only factor anymore. It was about survival. And people knew how to do it even with their crude weaponry. The win was being recognized in more subdued ways back on Earth in order to live. There weren't any grand parades or speeches, only a gradual understanding that they achieved the impossible. The alien invaders were pushed back, and Earth remained intact. For the absence of hostile ships in the skies was a relief to the residents who had witnessed the mayhem. Communities started rebuilding, working together to fix the damage caused by the invasion. The lessons learned during the conflict were discussed in private sessions by human military officials, who were aware that this was the Galactic Council, embarrassed by their loss, will not forget about the end. Humans had left their mark on Earth, but they had also attracted the galaxy's attention in a manner that never experienced before. The alien invaders might not come back right away, but eventually they would return stronger and better prepared. Thus, Earth needed to be ready for the sniper team's completion. There was little fanfare or joy when their mission was debriefed and they silently returned to their base. Just a component of a bigger endeavor, and they were aware that the sniper himself was still involved as he stored his equipment. Considering the future, he had completed his work, taken his shots, and assisted in turning the battle's tide, but he knew in his heart that this triumph was only one chapter. Earth, however, had earned its position in the galaxy in a far longer battle. The planet had defeated a highly skilled alien force, and the humans had survived. Demonstrated that they were fighters who could hold their ground even in the face of when they had demonstrated to the galaxy that they wouldn't be subdued so easily as night, and the odds were stacked against them. There was a peaceful sense of resolve in the air as it dropped over the world. The fight had been won, but the war was far from over. No longer viewed as a primitive, backward world, Earth was now the galaxy has noticed the aliens as a formidable force on a planet of warriors and survivors. When they reconvened in the outer regions of space, they realized they had seriously misjudged the humans with their simple weaponry and antiquated technology have accomplished the unimaginable in their battle. Returned and they prevailed, the Galactic Council would have to reconsider how it dealt with Earth, and humanity must get ready for the next battle with the railgun, sniper, and the resources that Earth forces had provided. A triumph they would never forget, but everyone understood that it was just the start.